Please welcome Arizona Corporate Commissioner Ana Tovar.
Para limpiar con el humo sagrado cada recuerdo. Cuando escriba tu nombre en la arena blanca con fondo azul, cuando mire el cielo en la forma cruel de una nube gris, aparezcas tú. Una tarde subo una alta loma, mire el pasado.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. How's everyone doing? Awesome. Well, I'm super excited to be with you today. My name is Ana Tovar, and I'm the first Latina statewide elected in Arizona. But I'm also here as a parent and a grandma who's distraught about the future rights and the personal freedoms of my children and grandchildren, which would be totally gone if Trump is elected. To think that they have fewer rights right now than I did growing up is a disaster. Well, let me tell you, we have a lot to talk about today, and I'm hoping that we'll have a great platica that you guys will ultimately enjoy. So for now, I'm honored to be introducing two women I'll be sharing the stage with. First, we are pleased to be joined today by actress and activist Francia Raisa. Yes! And just on a personal note, I'm inspired by Francia's story of being an organ donor. As many of you know, I myself am a survivor of true transplants because of another donor, and that's my brother Jose. And he's here with us today, so thank you. We are so thrilled to have Francia with us here in Arizona today, so please join me in giving her a warm Arizona welcome to Francia Raisa.
You're a good soldier, choosing your battle. Pick yourself up and dust yourself off and back in the saddle. You're on the front line, everyone's watching. You know it's serious, we're getting...
Oh, they cut it off. All right.
No dancing just yet, but we'll
We'll
do
get
some
there.
dancing.
It's a Latino event. We have to. I heard Selena Quintanilla earlier. Come on. Bidi bidi bam bam.
And of course, it is ultimately my great honor to welcome back to Arizona Vice President Kamala Harris.
I got excited. My bad.
I've been inspired by Vice President Harris since her elected service back in California. For me, she is the epitome of bringing people together and fighting to advance opportunities for all. Throughout her career, Vice President Harris has led the fight for freedom to live safe from gun violence, the freedom to vote, and the freedom to drink clean water and breathe clean air. Yes. Especially relevant today is that the Vice President is a fighter for women's rights to make decisions with their own bodies. She's been traveling across the country, meeting with patients and providers to uplift the voices of those harmed by Donald Trump's abortion bans. Oh, yes. She's been working very, very hard. As many of you heard today, she was across the country today, and she's here in Arizona. Alongside President Biden, Vice President Harris is fighting for reproductive freedoms. This is why in this election, we will be re-electing President Biden and Vice President Harris. And we're going to be sending Donald Trump a crystal clear message. Don't mess with Arizona freedoms. And now it is my honor to introduce the first woman to be elected Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris.
Hay que vivirla, todo aquel que piensa que está solo y que está mal, tiene que
afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Arizona. It's good to be back. It's really good to be back.
How cool is this? Our first female vice president, Kamala Harris. Latinas, this is incredible.
Not the last. Not the last.
Not the last, absolutely not. We're just getting started, girl, which is why we're here. And it's so insane that I got called to do this. You've been traveling a lot. You were in Maryland. I was actually in New York yesterday seeing that you were going to be doing an interview at 9 a.m. Eastern time, and I went, no, she's not. I'm going to be with her. What? So I'm sure you're tired. And, you know, it's crazy. You know, Anna mentioned earlier that I'm an organ donor. I donated a kidney about 7 years ago. And when I made that choice, I was told, just know that when you decide to get pregnant, you're going to run a high risk of preeclampsia. And because I have rights, I said, I'm willing to go through that because my doctors are going to take care of me. Yeah. And 2 weeks ago, I found out that not only did I make that decision, but I have PCOS and endometriosis, which is why I'm here. All the pain I've been going through and why my periods have been so bad, I'm like, okay, what is going on? And to hear that someone is prideful and trying to take our rights about such an important decision. And again, you have been traveling so much. Thank you so much for being here. But how do you see this moment? How did we get here?
So, first of all, thank you all, everyone, for being here. This is a moment. This is a moment that requires all of us to be as active as you are being. None of us can afford to passively sit by and watch this happen to the people of America, to the women of America. And the way, and thank you both, Anna, Francia, I mean, thank you for being here and traveling to be here and all of the leadership you're providing in the state. Listen, let's just level set. 2 years ago today, the highest court in our land took a constitutional right that had been recognized from the people of America, from the women of America. And thereafter, in state after state, laws have been proposed and passed that criminalize healthcare providers. You know, in Texas, they provide prison for life for a doctor or nurse who provides healthcare. Laws that punish women, laws that make no exception even for rape or incest. And you know, many of you know, I started my career as a prosecutor. One of the reasons why is the story I've just been telling more, but my best friend in high school, I learned, was being molested by her stepfather. And when I learned, I said to her, you have to come live with us. I called my mother. My mother said, of course she has to come live with us, and she did. The idea that these so-called leaders would say to a survivor of a crime of violence to their body, a survivor of a violation of their body, that survivor has no right or authority to make a decision about what happens to their body next, that's immoral. And that's what's happening in our country. What's happening in our country? Women going through miscarriage, going to an emergency room for care, being denied care because the people at the hospital are afraid they'll be criminalized for providing care. Women who, not until they develop sepsis, are receiving care, emergency care. And I think most Americans in my travels agree that one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree the government should not be telling her what to do with her body. We trust women to know what is in their own best interest. And so this is where we are. And 40% of Latinas in reproductive age live in a state with an abortion ban. So, and not to mention, if you look at the majority of black women live in the South. Every state in the South except for Virginia has an abortion ban. So understand how it is affecting specific groups of people. Understand that the majority of women who seek and receive abortion care are mothers. You know, on public policy, I always, you know, the people who are on my team, especially the younger people, I say, always on public policy, sit back and ask yourself, how will this impact a real person? So let's think about this. She's a mother God help her if she has paid family leave. God help her if she has affordable child care. God help her if she lives in a state with the ban that she has some extra money to afford a plane, bus, or train ticket to go where she has to go. And then think about what that means. So she's got to leave her home and her children to go to an airport to stand in a TSA line, to sit on a plane next to a perfect stranger, to go to a city where she's never been without probably her friends, because her best friend's taking care of the kids, to go seek this care, and she's got to get back immediately, and then get back on that plane and go, think about what this is meaning for real people every day. And so that's why we fight. And that's why we stand together and say, we're not having this. We're not having this. It's not okay. It's not okay.
It's not okay. And since the Dobbs ruling, it felt like overnight, state after state just started banning abortions, and they're not stopping. On my way here yesterday, that's all I saw on the news. What's his face? You know who I'm talking about. I'm going to make this a nationwide ban. Why are we celebrating this? So with all that in mind, what's next? Where are we going?
So to your point, who is to blame?
What's his face?
Well, we know. The former president, Donald Trump, hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did as he intended. And now we see these laws. And here's the thing. Donald Trump says he is proudly responsible for what he's done. Proudly responsible that our daughter has fewer rights than my mother-in-law. Proudly responsible doctors can be imprisoned. Proudly responsible that access to in vitro fertilization is now at risk. Access to contraception is now at risk. That women are, like the woman I was with this morning at the event in Maryland, she and her husband have gone through torture because of a denial of care. And so let's understand the connection between this issue and elections, because Joe Biden has been very clear. When Congress puts back in place the protections of Roe versus Wade, he will sign it into law.
Amen.
And who represents you in Congress also matters.
Yes, it does.
Because Arizona, and who is your governor, and who is your attorney general also matters. And those two, what they have done in particular here in Arizona to fight for freedom is outstanding. We've been watching it around the country, and thanks to you all, they are there to do that work.
Vice President, you just mentioned, our Governor Katie Hobbs and Attorney General Chris Mays, and they've been trailblazing and fighting the ridiculous bills that have been in the legislature. But I would definitely be remiss if I didn't recognize all of our legislators and senators that are equally as passionate, that are there day in and day out fighting for women, because these are people that they know in their communities. They know in their neighborhood. They represent them. And I see them working so diligently all the time. So please, if you're an elected official here, let's stand up. Let's see our senators and our representatives that are here. There we go. Ladies, you're amazing. You're an inspiration. Thank you for everything that you do. There's so many nonprofits that are out there advocating as well. But I just the state of Arizona 3 times. Francia and I were talking in the back because we were just like, we don't know how you do it.
The first thing I asked is, how do you stay healthy? I'm tired.
Well, I work out in the morning.
Probably
I
at
think
3
it's
a.m.
important to eat breakfast.
So you were on the news at 9 a.m. in Maryland. When did you work out? Wow.
Yeah, no, I started in D.C. this morning, then Maryland, and now I'm here, and then I go to California. So it's, I've taken over 60 trips in the first months of this year, and traveling the country, and here's what I want to bring to you, maybe notes from the field, if you will. There is a movement afoot, and we are all part of that movement. You know, the people who were the leaders of this movement that got Roe to be the law of the land for 50 years, they have passed the baton to us. Yes. And the question is now, while we are carrying the baton, what are we doing with it? And I know we are taking our role and responsibility seriously. And notice what's been happening since 2 years ago when this decision came down. From Kansas to California, Ohio, Virginia, Wisconsin, in Montana, in so-called red and blue states, when freedom was on the ballot, the American people voted for freedom. Voted for freedom. And that is also telling us this is not a partisan issue and doesn't have to be a partisan issue. Momentum is on our side. We as Americans feel very strongly about our freedoms. And this is an issue that impacts all of us regardless of gender. Because for a number of reasons, whether it be because you have women in your life who can be directly affected, or whether it is you care about one of the foundations for who we are in terms of how we represent ourselves and what we think of ourselves as Americans. Or whether you just think about it from this way. Think about the notion and the fact. A most fundamental right, the right to make decisions about your own body, is now being made by the government. But think about that regardless of your gender. If they can go for that, the most fundamental of rights, what's next? And check out that Dobbs decision that came down 2 years ago, because Clarence Thomas said the quiet part out loud. Contraception, same-sex marriage. What other rights could be at stake? So it's a moment for us to all, and I can see that when I look at the diversity of this group of people and this group of leaders. We know this affects everyone. It affects everyone.
Well, Vice President, we appreciate your 3 visits here on reproductive rights, and we welcome you at any time to Arizona, because what you bring, you just, our crowd here is enthusiastic, and they feed off of your energy, they feed off of your passion, and I bet each and every one of you is going to go home and explain to your friends, your familia, your vecina, maybe your nana, your tia. You're going to tell them. Chisme, yes. You're going to tell them exactly what happened today, and then they're going to be inspired to do something. We have a critical ballot on the measure for abortion here in Arizona, and know that we are fighting tooth and nail, Vice President, to making sure that we have the freedoms that we ultimately deserve, Arizonans, correct?
Yeah. And Commissioner, I have to say, you've been an extraordinary leader. I think every time I've come to Arizona, you have been here with me, and I've watched your leadership, and I'm so honored that we're sharing the stage today together. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm absolutely honored.
Thank you.
Well, Vice President, we have a member in our audience who is a DACA recipient and a mother. And I met her backstage, Maria Leon, and she has a question for you that is ultimately a personal question for her, because it relates to her every single day, and it's going to give her some hope to be able to reach out to you. So Maria, can you please stand up and ask your question to Vice President Harris?
I'm a proud DACA recipient who is graduating from nursing school next year. I am also a first-time mother who is very passionate about women's health and look forward to giving back. Thanks to the executive order your administration recently announced, I have a path to a visa and citizenship. May you please tell me more about why you and President Biden took this action?
Yes. Well, first of all, as I said to you when we got together earlier, congratulations on everything you have done and achieved and earned. You are extraordinary. And one of the things that I said to Maria, she has decided she wants to answer a calling to enter a profession that is about healing and lifting people up and taking care of them. And you have already and are prepared to give so much. And the least that we can do as a country is recognize who you are and your value to all of us. And that's part of the reason behind the executive order that the president most recently announced. There are two components to it. One is for spouses, so undocumented spouses of American citizens, that they will now have an expedited way to apply and not have to leave the country to do it and not risk deportation. And this protection applies to their children as well. And then the second is for our young people and our dreamers and understanding that they who have done so much and contributed and have just shown how incredible they are, that they should be rewarded for that excellence. And so that is what we have done. And for each population, we expect that about 500,000 people will directly benefit. I'll make sure that we give everyone information as you're leaving about the websites, so anyone who can qualify. Because the one thing I'd ask, there's just an extraordinary group of leaders here, that let's help get the word out so that we can bypass the misinformation and disinformation that can happen in moments like this. And so we'll get that out to everyone. But that's and the point behind the policy is also this. Joe Biden and I believe very strongly we should keep families together. And unlike the previous president who was into separating families. And there is something that is just very basic about an approach that also understands we've got to fix this system. After we were elected, right after our inauguration, the first bill that we offered, the first of anything, before infrastructure, before the Inflation Reduction Act, before the Chips and Science Act. You see, I'm going through accomplishments.
Go ahead.
Girl, you sure you're not Latina? We do that.
Don't waste your time, But before any of that was to propose a pathway for citizenship. And they wouldn't take it up. And then months ago, as you know, the result of months of work, bipartisan work, with some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, there was a deal to deal with what we need to do around the border, pathway to citizenship. And they get a call from Donald Trump, who says, don't take it up. Because, you see, he would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And that's part of what we have to recognize. A solution was at hand, and he said, don't do it. Ultimately, I think there's something about this moment that has to be addressed, which is, over the last several years, there's this kind of backward approach pushed by some to suggest that the measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you beat down, instead of, Maria, what you know, what we all know. The true measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you lift up. Right? And that's part of what we've got to reclaim in this election. Let's reclaim that approach that I do believe the vast majority of us embrace. That's what we want in our leaders. So there you are.
So you just said something. You said, you believe it, you believe it, you believe it. And you touched on something earlier about how important it is to vote, not just in November, but just every election. You guys have a primary coming up. It's all connected, just like our health. If we stress out, our cortisol level goes up. What happens when our cortisol level goes up? We gain weight. All of this stuff, it's all connected. So it's important to vote in every election, not just this one. But you're speaking, and everyone here, Commissioner said it, you're just so passionate. And I mentioned, like, are you sick? Do you get tired? Because you have so much passion and hope, and I think that's what's keeping you motivated and going. How can we have that same hope? What advice can you give us to stay on track and speak our voices without getting, backlash from other people, especially because there is such a stigma behind abortion and voting and immigration?
I think it's really important for each of us to understand our power and not allow the circumstances or situation to silence us or make us feel like we're alone. I'd ask all the leaders in this room, to your point, look around this room. And at moments when you're in that type of situation, like, hold on to this image in your heart and in your mind. You're not alone. And especially when it comes to those of us who are advocating for the rights of women, we have to remember that we are strong, and there is a community of people, a big community, a diverse community of people that stand behind the notion that nobody should be treated less than equal. And so hold on to that. And listen, I'll speak from personal experience. I think many of us have had this experience. And I'll say this in particular to the young leaders here. There are going to be many times in your life where you're going to be told, that can't be done. It's never been done before. It's not time. They're not ready for it. And then this is the one I love. It's going to be a lot of hard work. Don't you listen. I eat no for breakfast. Don't you hear it? Don't you hear no? And many times you will also be in a situation where you may be the only one who has a perspective or an experience or looks like you. You've got to know everybody here is cheering you on when you're in that room. You are not alone, and we expect that in that moment you will have chin up and shoulders back and use your voice, knowing you represent all of us when you are in that situation.
Vice President, I'm looking at the crowd, and I'm seeing a lot of the women here that have inspired me to be where I am today. Yeah. And I know that there were many before that trailblazed, that didn't have a title, that didn't run for election. No. But they ultimately opened doors and windows for us to be here today.
That's right.
And to continue to speak our mind, to speak our voice. I get so much hope from you, seeing you all the time speaking. And I'm very hopeful here in Arizona. I'm hopeful that we are going to re-elect you and President Biden.
We will.
I am.
We're going to win. We are going to win.
We are. Yes.
We are going to win. It won't be easy, but we are going to win.
I'm also hopeful to everyone that is running on the ticket right now in regards to how they feel about women and women's rights and freedoms, and ultimately our democracy as a whole. Everything right now is on the line come this November. And I know one person that I'm ultimately trying to make sure that he becomes our next senator in the state of Arizona, and that is Ruben Gallego.
Ruben Gallego! Yes. He is going to win! And you are going to make it so!
We have a lot of work to do, but I know each and every one of us here is going to roll up our sleeves, and we're going to take your inspiration day in and day out, and your words of wisdom of knowing, like, hey, we're not alone. just imagine this group looking at each other, supporting one another,
right.
and knowing that we can do it.
That's right.
And we're all going to eat no for breakfast.
Órale, órale. That is ultimately right. So I know we have a couple of minutes more, Vice President, and we don't want you to leave early, do we? Maybe if you can give us some of your insights of maybe of what you're thinking, what happens now until November. Because there's a lot of major decisions that are going to be coming down, a lot of initiatives that President Biden and you are working on. Let us know how, first, educate us, empower us, and let us know what we can do to help.
So, thank you. Everything that you are doing, this is a group of you all, everyone here has decided to leave, and I thank you so very much. And the work that you are doing here in Arizona on every level, including the most recent point that you made about Ruben Gallego, is going to make a difference for this state and for people around our country. And know that your work then has meaning. We have 134 days to go. One of the most important things that we can do is to make sure everyone is registered to vote and they do vote. And let's start with just checking on your own voter status to make sure they've not moved your polls, to make sure that you know where you can vote. Go to iwillvote.com. It's also available in Spanish. And encourage your neighbors and friends to do the same. Let's get everyone registered to vote. Let's remind everyone, this election is going to determine the trajectory of our country for generations. Many of us have worked on these elections every 4 years, and we say, this is the one. This here is the one. This is the one. When we have such fundamental freedoms that are being attacked in our country, this is a moment where none of us can sit this out. None of us can say, oh, we'll pick it back up the next time. We've got these extremists in our country passing laws. In the state of Georgia, for example, they passed a law that makes it illegal to give people food and water for standing in line to vote. The hypocrisy abounds. What happened to love thy neighbor? Laws that in the state of Florida don't say gay, where some young teacher who is doing God's work teaching other people's children is afraid to put up a picture of themselves with their partner because they might get fired. God knows we don't pay them enough as it is. When we look at people living, I did a college tour this last fall. Gen Z, I love Gen Z. I love Gen Z. Oh, you guys are terrific. And I'd ask our young leaders, raise your hand if at any point between kindergarten and 12th grade you had to endure active shooter drill. Almost the ones who are here, they all raise their hands. What our young people have gone through in terms of their fear about assault weapons, the fact that we don't have universal background checks. There are so many issues at stake in this election, both in terms of local elections, state elections, Congress, and the White House. And we each have the power. And I'll close with this point. As Vice President, I have now met over 150 world leaders, presidents, prime ministers, chancellors, and kings, many of them multiple times. The most recent international trip I took was to Switzerland, but before that I was in Dubai. I was representing our country in these places. Almost 201 world leaders came up to me and said, hope you guys are going to be okay. Because they know what this election means for their countries. So our work right now is absolutely directly going to affect the people of Arizona, the people of our country, but will have an impact on people around the world. That's what's in our hands right now. And democracy, Commissioner, you mentioned democracy. I think the nature of democracy is there's two sides to it. On the one hand, incredible strength. When a democracy is intact, what it does to protect and defend the freedoms and liberties of its people. Incredible strength in what it can give its people. And it is very fragile. It is only as strong as our willingness to fight for it. And so fight we will. And when we fight, we win.
Francia, how do you think our plática went? Good?
Our plática went pretty good, I would say, right? You guys agree with that?
Yes.
I mean, we had a good time, we were dancing, and we're all gonna eat no for breakfast. I love that line. That's what I took out of all that. No, you are not taking my rights away. And you were talking about schools. I was like, every day I had to say the Pledge of Allegiance. And I just remember at the end, under God, liberty and justice for all. Where's the liberty? Where's the justice? If we're gonna lean on that and still represent that, then we have to vote and keep our rights as human beings, as citizens. We have gone way too far to go backwards. That's my time. But
You
anyway,
guys, join me again in thanking Francia for coming out and Vice President Harris
please give
as well,
another
too.
round of applause for Vice President Kamala Harris.